Hello, welcome to Stunner Stage. I'm Stunner. This is my stage. Um, Tonight's going to be an interesting one. 4 months ago, back in October of 2024, I had two very good friends of mine sit down here and have a conversation. And the cameras that I was shooting with that night had some corruption on the files, and it was very hard. In fact, I thought impossible to get this video completed. I recently found a backup camera that actually did film the entire thing. It's not the best quality video, but it's still the conversation. So they made time for me, and I want to make sure that what they put into that hour conversation together gets out there where people can hear it. So without further ado, please welcome Mr. John Gensmer and Mr. Tim Kletti from the band Rival 5 on Stunner Stage.
All right. So, John, I'll let you go first. First time music spoke to you.
I was a kid, and I was very young because my dad actually was into Led Zeppelin, Van Halen, Black Sabbath, all the cool rock and roll stuff. Yeah, he was
Great parenting.
Yeah, great parenting.
Oh, man.
And then I just remember the Van Halen 1984 album. I was 5 years old. I was born year of our Lord 1900 plus 79. And I just remember I was obsessed with that album cover, that baby with the cigarette, and I was just like, what? Like I don't know what it was, but it just spoke to me. And then after that, so I would always listen to that album. And then my dad also plays drums, so but he didn't have a drum set at the time, so he was always doing his own business, rescue work and stuff like that. So he would just air drum, and I just remember watching him and MTV and just watching the correlation and everything that he's doing, and then like what the drummer's doing, kind of thing. So then I knew where the snare is, where the hi-hat is, and all this other stuff. So then I just started air drumming at a very young age along with it.
So, along with that, you probably saw the video for Jump.
Yep.
And the huge, clear, Rototom's kit that Alex was playing on, and your head just kind of went,
exploded.
Boom. Yeah.
My dad, when I was a little bit younger, he says that I always cried when whenever he'd start playing the drums, I was like 2 or 3 or something like that. But it's it's my first memory. I vividly remember exactly where it was in the house, what it looked like, everything about it. It was a Ludwig Crystallite, smoke colored, really cool. I remember that. And I don't know if it was because I was actually he was playing it was too loud and I was crying, or if I wanted to get on it, and his memory is skewed maybe, where he's just yelling at me don't touch my drums, and then that made me cry. That's my version of the story. So I'm going with it.
So what was the next evolution after that? The first time music spoke to you, but when did it click? When did it become, now I think I want to play music?
Fast forward a little bit, it was probably 87. That's when Guns N' Roses and Def Leppard came out. My mom was really into those bands. And I think I was just, I don't know, getting into it. And then, I was probably 6th grade. And we had, it was my grandfather's birthday. And he was a guitar player, piano player, played everything. I just took piano lessons from him when I was younger. And he played everything except the drums. And then, so he basically got some of the family members and friends for his 70th birthday where they could like jam together. And then, so we had this rented drum set in our basement. And again, I was obsessed. And then that was the defining moment, really. Yep, I have to do this.
That's cool. I will say, you had parents who liked Led Zeppelin and Van Halen and Guns N' Roses and Def Leppard.
I lucked out.
My parents, I think I was talking about it before. My parents were into Eddie Arnold and Guy Lombardo, not Dave Lombardo, Guy Lombardo and his big band, Roger Whittaker. That's the music I grew up with. And we're not that far apart age-wise, but that influence of music always being in the house, which I think is something that I think we have in common, is just the type of music that was in the house. In my world was all started with hee haw, which again, if you ask people of my specific generation, the first time I saw Roy Clark play guitar on TV, and I might have been 5 or 6 years old, maybe, the experience of watching Roy Clark play. And it was just boom, an explosion. Now, granted, and that was a weekly thing. Is my brother and I would sit on my dad's lap on his big recliner, and we'd watch hee haw together. And in my world, there was no other music other than country and or Western, because that was what was on hee haw. And there wasn't a Led Zeppelin at the time, and there wasn't, because I didn't have exposure. I grew up in a little farm town in southeastern Wisconsin, but hee haw was everything. And Roy Clark was, and again, I've spoken to so many people who say the same thing. Roy Clark made me want to play guitar, because not only was he incredible, but he was also really entertaining. And then a couple of years later, I saw Kiss on the Paul Lynde Halloween special. And I think my parents still regret allowing me to watch that to this day. But that was the explosion of what the absolute bloody H is going on here. I've never seen anything like that. And instantly I was just like, that's it. This is what I want to do with my life.
How old were you?
Well, that would have been fall of 76. So I just turned 8. So I started playing guitar when I was 6 because of Roy Clark. And my dad convinced our summer school music teacher to let me take guitar lessons, even though he had to be in 2nd grade to do it. And I went and took guitar lessons. They had rented an acoustic guitar for me, which was literally as big as me.
Yeah.
And you talked about crying. It sparks a memory for me. Is at the end of the summer, my dad was going to take the rental guitar back. And I remember standing, he walked out to the car and he was backing out, and I stood in the garage and I was crying because I could not tolerate not being around that thing. It smelled a certain way and it felt a certain way and what have you. And that is, I'm not embarrassed. That was 50 years ago. That still sitting here, and I still feel that passion about it. When I see a guitar, it's like, there's the Mona Lisa. That's great. That's awesome. Look at that Les Paul. And it just gives you shivers and whatever. So, I guess the first time music spoke to me without question was hee haw, but the first time it punched me in the face was Kiss lip syncing to what, again, we didn't know they were lip syncing. We didn't know what that was. And just seeing that, and the little flames, and Gene jumping around, but they never let him stick his tongue out on TV either, which is something you didn't realize until like a couple of weeks later. I convinced my mom to let me buy, like, it was Hit Parader or Circus or something like that. And then there was a picture of Gene with his tongue sticking out. And I'm like, oh, brain melt. And here we are. So yeah. So music speaks to everybody a little bit differently. But so first concert experience.
Megadeth. It was late for me getting into concerts or being allowed to go. So though my parents allowed me to listen to cool music, when I got into heavy metal, it was actually a little late on that side too, because I was still listening to, you know, Def Leppard and, like the stuff that's on the radio, basically. But then once I heard Enter Sandman, that was life changing. And yeah, so then my mom just thought I was too young, and she didn't want to go to it because it was a little too abrasive for her, probably. Even though she loves it now, but it took a while. So yeah, so finally I was 15, I think. Yeah.
What tour was that?
95 was Reckoning Day, so that was right after Euthanasia, the summer after Euthanasia was released.
95. What venue was that?
That was Trout Air.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, that was really cool. So yeah, that was a big bill, and then that experience was really cool for me because it was the first time I've ever heard of the band Korn. Not that I'm into them like a whole lot, but I dug some of that stuff. But him coming out on stage with the bagpipes was mind blowing.
Yeah,
I'm like, what is this dude doing?
Yeah,
And then so that was interesting, and I was digging it. And then also on that tour was Fear Factory.
Ooh.
And I thought Slayer and Megadeth and bands like that were all cool with their cute bass drum playing, and hearing Raymond, it was like, what is this dude doing? Like these crazy patterns in matching the guitar riffs, and I was completely blown away. So I was obsessed with Fear Factory after that. So yeah, and then of course big show Megadeth. So that was
Pantera a bit early for you?
No,
because that was what, 1990, I think. Cowboys from Hell, someplace around there.
Yeah, Cowboys from Hell was late 90s.
Yeah. Just in the comment of kick drum following the guitar riff kind of thing,
he was more groove though, I think. Yeah. Just like he just played so appropriately. I don't know, a different style completely for how heavy the guitars were. I think that's what made Pantera so special. His groove behind everything.
It's that Texas influence, man. It was the Texas influence.
But no, I got 92. That was when everything happened for me. It was 92. Basically, it was Megadeth, Pantera.
92 Seasons in the Abyss. Is that 91?
That was 91.
Yeah, I was close.
Yeah,
I can't remember. I remember all that stuff.
But Live Decade of Aggression, I believe, was 2 or 93.
I mean, I know you're a big Slayer guy. So when was the first time you saw Slayer?
It was 90. Had it been 98. Unfortunately, I believe it was the Diablos tour.
Yeah.
But I was trying to go. They had a show in 95, and I would have went. I had friends that were going. I had a way to get there. I had money for it and everything. But I was in drumline, and we had a competition that night. And Egan, I was so pissed. I'm like, why am I doing this? I want to go see Slayer. As I just stare outside longingly at St. Paul.
I skipped a swim meet to go see Iron Maiden with Twisted Sister in 1984. Awesome. My best friend Randy got a second row center stage, waited in line for a day and a half at the Mecca in Milwaukee for it. And he's like, you got to come. I'm like, I do. So I skipped a swim meet and got in a little bit of trouble with my coach. But the things we do for seeing Iron Maiden on Power Slave.
Oh, wow.
Second row center when the fog rolled out during Rime of the Ancient Mariner and it covered us. So my experience was like lights coming through fog. It was.
Was this your first concert experience?
No. That was probably
a cool one.
My first concert experience would have been. I vaguely remember it because I was pretty young. My family went to see Roy Clark with the Mandrell sisters. That was before Barbara Mandrell even broke away from the. Yeah, he's going, who the hell are you talking about? It's all right. Barbara Mandrell was a big 70s country singer. Again, in the world I was in, there was country and Western, and there was nothing else. But my first rock show was Kiss on their Love Gun tour, which ultimately turned into a live too. Wow. And Kiss and Uriah Heep. I don't remember exactly when it was, but I was would have been what, 5th grade, and my best friend's dad took us. And that's obviously the reason we got to go. And we had, what I remember, we had nosebleed seats, but I remember my dad telling me before I left, handed me the binoculars and just said, take these with you. And so for the hour and 35 minutes, which is that tour, I just sat and watched my heroes through binoculars, and it was like Ace was playing to me that entire night. Cool. And again, it was earth shattering. And then they came back to Milwaukee on their Dynasty tour, and my same friend and his dad took us to see that. And that was the return of Kiss, when things were clearly, even at that age, I could look at it and go, nah, something's not right. But it was still Kiss. And they had the huge, ridiculous costumes and what have you, and all that. But once I got into high school, then it's like that's when the concerts started picking up. So, but yeah, the first one was my hero. And again, I remember being at it. I was so young, I really don't remember much about it, but I remember being there. And I just remember being kind of awed by, wow, all these people are here too. They know about this guy that I see on this thing called a television. I really couldn't comprehend it. But yeah, but like I said, by the time I got to see Kiss, I had a little bit better understanding of what I was in for. So, absolutely. And again, the light bulb had gone on when I saw him on TV, but that was basically the nail in the coffin. It's like, now there's no question what I'm going to do with my life. So yeah, that was something else. I mean, again, the list of people and hearing you talk about it as the bands you saw. I'm like, I remember the first time I saw Megadeth and Slayer and, whatever. Saw Megadeth on the Monsters of Rock tour, which was at Trout Air, which was Slayer, Megadeth, and Anthrax, with Alice in Chains on their first tour, warming them up.
90 or 91.
It was summer of 91. Because I had just moved to the cities, literally had graduated from college, moved in with girlfriend, now wife of 31 years. And it was, I think it was early June. I think we had been living together for like a week, and we got to go see this. And that was the first time I saw Slayer. It was the first time I was ever really, really in a pit, because that pit was the size of a football field. It was crazy. But I was like, oh man, this is fantastic. And I'd already been into Alice in Chains, so getting to see them play Facelift live was pretty cool. Very cool. So anyway, it's just funny. You're talking about this band. I'm like, I remember that. So all right, local heroes, man. Who rung your bell?
Okay, so local heroes. I don't even like. There's one particular drummer who I think maybe not at the time really influenced me, or I really thought of as someone that I'd really respect later on. I just thought, okay, he's a badass. He's beyond my level. I don't even know how to approach appreciating what he does. And that's Dave King. He was in Happy Apple, and so he was a jazz drummer basically. But my band back then was called Acadian, and those are two of the guys that are in Wicked Garden. They were in Acadian, so Ben and Jamie, and then we had another guy named Mark, and Jamie was playing bass back then. That was my high school band, really. And those guys, like Jamie, I think he was still pretty much into metal, but they really got into alternative music, and just so things got. I was exposed to all kinds of different stuff in high school. Anything, it's all about metal, and then it was alternative music. So Radiohead was a big one for me. but anyway, so there was a guy, yeah, this Dave King, and Chris McGuire. They were both drummers of, not at the same time, but first it was Chris, then Dave, but this band called 12 Rods. And my band Acadian was like, we were obsessed with those guys and followed them around and tried to do, and then we eventually got to know them. We did shows with them, opening for them, and eventually even started rehearsing in there. Had like a loft above, kind of over by the Target Field now. So yeah, they had this huge loft, and then we just kind of rented space or time from them, really. And then yeah, so I would say just not necessarily in playing style, but just to see how hard you have to work to achieve what you want to achieve. And Dave went far. Basically lives in New York now, and just recording for a lot of people. I don't know. But, so that was one as far as drumming goes. I would say musicians in general, and then just inspiration / jealousy, kind of whatever, I guess. There's actually a band called Lord of All Desires, and that had Tony Williams. Was this 16-year-old kid with really long hair, played great guitar, and he could scream. Man, that kid had a voice. And then Ryan Malmstrom, he was playing keyboards in that. And then eventually, I ended up later on in bands with both of them. So, it was really cool. It's neat to see that Tony went from that to actually, real singing, and then just really develop his playing styles and furthering his drumming and his keyboard playing and stuff like that. The dude can play literally everything. It's amazing to me, actually. So.
Well, it's good. I mean, it's also good. You get inspiration from numerous places. It doesn't have to be a drummer. It can be anybody.
Yep.
Or someone specifically not in the style that you're playing. We've been around it long enough. You know talent when you see talent.
Yes.
They don't have to be thrashing. They could be.
Yep.
I think of an acoustic guitar player locally, Billy McLaughlin.
Yes.
Who the whole two-handed thing, and I basically, after I saw him the first time, decided that, well, that's what a guitar player looks like. I'm just going to pretend until it's over, because he's like a freak of nature.
He's a freak of nature.
And the fact of what he went through, where I believe did he have a stroke or something like that, and he taught himself how to play the other hand.
Yes, left-handed. Mind-boggling. What?
Yeah. So he just blew me away, but he wasn't necessarily my first local heroes, but. My story kind of changes a bit because of my geography, how I moved from living in the Milwaukee area, or growing up in that little area. And, I was at high school bands, but I didn't know anything. All we did was, we listened to what was on the radio and what was on the record, but I never got anywhere close to any rock bands other than going to the Mecca and seeing Rat with Billy Squier, or Rat with Bon Jovi, or a year later, Bon Jovi with Rat, or, two bands touring together, Flop Spots, in the matter of a year, which was a great story for us that we, again, didn't comprehend. But I moved to college, and my college band got to know a band out of Wausau called Aircraft. And they were, they kind of took us under their wing. And again, we're this college band, 4 college guys just playing whatever. We were playing Danzig covers. And again, this is the late 80s, so nobody had any idea who Danzig was except for the hardcores. And we'd be playing in like Upper Michigan and playing Danzig songs and playing Chili Peppers and playing stuff like that, again, today everyone goes, oh, that's great. But these guys saw us play a show in Wausau, and their guitar player, Mitch, kind of pulled us aside and said, you guys are good. You really need to be honed if you really want to do something. So Mitch Vigut was the guy that kind of took us under his wing, and we got to play a lot of opening shows for them And they were signed with Curb Records. And they, I was proud. They had the tour bus and they had all this stuff. And every show was 90% women, which was really kind of cool too. It's like, again, we're still up there playing Danzig covers, but we're playing. So I would say definitely the guys, their drummer, Spyro, and I never really knew what his real name was, but he was an odd duck, but man, the guy was just so talented. But we learned a lot from them about how to present, or I should say, I learned a lot from them about how to present a band on stage. But then I got to know Kilo from Flip, Eric.
Oh, yeah.
We went to college together. So his first band in Menominee was called Deceiver, if I remember right. And then he graduated ahead of me and moved to town, and he started a band called Clock Sheila. And that's how he got in with Bryn, and knowing them. So their first show was opening up for my college band at a place in Eau Claire. But getting to know Kilo and then watching him go through that experience, and then he kind of helped introduce me to people when I moved to town. And, like I said, I moved to town, and within a couple of weeks, I got in Morticia, which was a band that I really knew a lot about. I followed them because I loved the theatrics and the vampire and the blood and the gore and stuff like that. And so I certainly think that both Matt and Jody were definitely heroes of people that taught me a lot. But let's talk about Billy McLaughlin, and I got to meet Paul Metza, another amazing acoustic artist in this town. Strangely enough, in the studio recording some acoustic stuff for the last Morticia album. My second day in Morticia, I was in the studios. We were recutting some stuff for the last album with Brian Bart. Dare Force. I'm like, oh, great. I literally have lived in town here for a couple days, and I'm playing guitar in front of Brian Bart in his studio. So luckily, all these people were all so cool and just helped me kind of, figure things out. But way too many. And I think the biggest one of all, who it's just kind of an interesting story, is in my college band, we got a chance to warm up for Slave Raider. And I remember in high school watching Headbangers Ball on Saturday nights. My best friend Randy and I, because we were into Slayer and stuff, so we clearly didn't have dates or anything. So we'd watch Headbangers Ball every Saturday night. I remember seeing Slave Raider the very first time and going, "That's interesting. They're very different looking." They had shot their video for Make Some Noise, and it looked like they're out in the middle of a desert, and it turns out they did it in a parking lot, like back behind the IDS building or something. But it looks like they're out in the wasteland, and their look and everything. And again, it vibed with me because it was makeup, and there was more to it than that, the kind of the Kiss thing. And then we got the chance to warm up for them when I was in my college band. I remember I was so intimidated by their entire presence, and the venue we were playing, the stage, and then you had the stairs going down to the green room to the right of it. We got done walking down the stairs, and Shane was walking up the stairs, and he had his chainsaw with him. And my wife, Michelle, was walking in front of me, and he winked at her and just kind of revved it, and he didn't have a chance, honestly. Yeah. And he revved it, and he just kind of poked her with it, and he just kind of laughed as he walked by. And I was like shaking in my boots. I was like, oh my God, that's Chainsaw Kane. And then here we are 30 years later, and he's our agent. He's my friend, and he asked me to be involved with Slave Raider and playing a show. And I find myself standing in a room rehearsing with Rock and Letitia and Shane, and looking at him going, man, how crazy is this? 30 years ago, 30 plus years ago, if you would have told me that I would be playing with these guys, I would have, called you your bluff. But it's just interesting how that journey, it takes you on that path. But Shane, definitely. I mean, the guy's knowledge and his passion, but as well as his dedication, but his focus on what is required to put on a show. I think that's so cool. Yeah. And every time I talk to him, I learn something. So you got to put him as a local. Again, I'm not local to here. But I've lived here since '91, so I guess I could call it my
own. Yeah, unfortunately for me, I think with just because of the band that I was in in high school. Like, I didn't actually get to know the local metal scene at all. So I never knew Avalanche or any of those cool bands, and never knew them until much, much later.
Yeah. Yeah. It's there's so, it's funny how Minnesota has always been kind of overlooked for anything other than flannel and Prince. But there was some great metal bands that came out of this town, man. The Coup de Grace was a great band, and Power Mad, man, oh, they were fantastic. Like I said, flyover country, maybe a little bit of it, maybe the timing wasn't right. We all understand how that works, but there were some amazing metal bands that came out of this town. Well, Regina, they were they were some of the grandfathers of all of it. Man, they were fantastic. So, um, tons of it, just tons of it. It's just kind of cool to still be able to be part of that. I would have to say Jeff Loven in Obsession. You kidding me? Jeff Loven. There's guitar playing, and then there's Jeff Loven, and I'm honored, kind of thrilled to be able to call him my friend, and we've chatted about it. I still remember when I saw his picture when he won that Floyd Rose contest, and the great story about he won this Floyd Rose contest, but he was actually playing a Kaler when he recorded it to send it to him, and he got picked out of this group, and but Jeff is, when it just comes to how to play guitar, Jeff I would have to give him huge creds. Yeah, huge creds. And now his solo show, I don't know if anyone's had a chance to. I hope a lot of people have had a chance to see it, but he's such a blast. He's such a great entertainer, and he's committed to it. And so I got to give Jeff some props. So, all right, let's move on. Good stories of you. I know some of your stories because we've been around each other long enough, but
Anyone in metal, of course, has heard me talk about this 1,000 times.
Do it 1,001, man. Go for it.
Here we go. So I was in this band called Epicurean, and we were doing a lot of DIY tours. And this was back like when MySpace was still a thing. And MySpace really worked well for networking with other bands because you could see how many plays they have. Sometimes eventually you catch on that they had a bot that would kept playing those. Still, it would be worth looking at the bands, and then just kind of reaching out to them and be like, hey, we're looking at trying to do this or that. During these dates, do you have anything that would work out? And then so eventually it just kind of worked out where we ended up meeting some people that out in Ohio, and this guy Neil got us. I can't remember his last name. Why is it drawing a blank? But anyway, he somehow was getting. He had Metal Blade's attention, and so he was submitting bands and getting them signed, and we just happened to be one of them. We got on it, got signed, and then got a booking agent, and eventually started going out on bigger tours, like real tours, but we're still driving in our short bus. I mean, it is what it is. Senior transport bus, one of those things. Yeah, it's pretty cool. But so I got to was Overkill was probably the first big one. That was like October 2008. And then the other band that was on that tour was a band called Warbringer, thrash band out of California. And that's where I met my buddy Nick. We became fast friends. He was an incredible drummer. And we were friends ever since then, basically. And then so we found out we were going to be touring again together the following year in April and May with Creator and Exodus. And it was like January of 2009, we went on tour with a band from Greece called Rotting Christ. And those guys are great. They're so good. They really are. I don't care what the name is.
Yeah.
They're brilliant. They're so good. They're great guys too. But yeah, Warbringer was on tour with Soilwork. I was
Yep.
so pissed because I'm like, we should be on that tour. That's more in line with what we do. But yeah, anyway, so we crossed paths in Canada and had a hangout night. So I don't know, we just became really good friends with Warbringer for a while. And then on tour, they were doing some coming back from California, traveling back over. We had to meet in Virginia and start the Creator tour over there. And Nick came up, and well, actually, no, the whole band, they stayed overnight at my place. And then, like, Nick, the next day calls me. He's like, dude, I broke my arm. You have to learn our songs and play for me on this tour. It's 2 months long. I got a week and a half to cram, and they're releasing a new album. And so I got the tracks early, of course, because I'm learning some, like at least I think 4 of them or something like that, and I'm just listening to them over and over again, and just asking Nick all kinds of questions about what the hell is he doing. And of course, when I actually get to see him when we're out in Virginia finally, he's like, he's in a sling, so he can't like show me the parts or anything like that. He's kind of trying to explain what they are. But yeah, man, we hit the ground running. Well, actually, the first show that we were supposed to play was in Danville, Virginia, and that was with Exodus. And like a gift from God, I was so nervous. I was freaking out that we had to do this. It was going to be no rehearsal whatsoever, just getting on stage and giving it hell. And we get a call from our agent, and he said that lightning struck the venue and blew literally everything.
Oh boy.
Nothing works.
Yeah.
Show's canceled. So the Warbringer guys came over. We were staying with my buddy Al Bourne. He's another local brilliant drummer. Works at Guitar Center in Bloomington. But yeah, when he was living out there, he had this cool shed that was like it was soundproofed and everything, because this is Virginia, where they have a house on a slab basically, and they had 2 bedrooms, very tiny house, no room for anything. And so he had all of his studio stuff out in the shed. So we went out there, and I finally got my rehearsal in with them. So thankful. Yeah. So then the next show was in New York at Nokia Theater, and that was something else, man. Just like, that was the tour for me. And oddly enough, I remember at the end of it, we were driving up from Florida, headed to I think Virginia again. Actually, we're closing the tour out there. By then I became friends with the Creator guys, and like, because I was pulling double duty and all this other stuff, like I could not sleep. I just could not sleep. I'm a very light sleeper. I still to this day sleep with earplugs in, because it's fine. He's got a mask now. He's fine. But Eli used to snore so heavy, he would wake the dead. So I had like earplugs, I had ear muffs, and then I had a pillow. Like I basically, my bunk was like a coffin. It was like only this wide, and I just had this body pillow where I would have the pillow over my face just enough where I could breathe.
Your bunk was already like being in an MRI machine the way it was. Yeah.
So that's what I had to do to sleep. And then finally those guys took pity on me, and they're like, well, why don't you just roll with us? And I'm like, okay. So I'm on this nice, tour bus, and then Yeah, that first night I slept. Remember the guy, the Epicurean guys came on the bus and they're like, hey, is our drummer here? And they're like, yeah. And it was like 4 p.m. and they're like waking me up.
Oh,
Yeah, it was.
one good night's sleep on the road.
Slept, like,
that's a great story. Having a good night's sleep on the road.
14 hours I slept that night. Yeah. Oh. But yeah. But anyway, so like the thought that I had on the way up there was just like I had this sinking feeling that this might be the best it's going to get for me. And I don't know why I thought that, but like, yeah, shortly after we went through guitar player issues and recording and this and that, and eventually we ended up splitting. And then by then I had my daughter was born. So, all right, this is the end for me. I guess I'm gonna finish college, see what happens after this.
Yeah, it's an interesting path, and it's funny that there's a lot of parallels. A lot of people I know kind of went through that same thing. I mean, mine. Oh, again, being in the other thing that I do, I've been involved with music, the retail side of it forever and ever and ever. And you get to meet a lot of people. And, a segment like this could almost be, dropping, oh, here, let me pick that name up that you just dropped,
Yeah.
That kind of thing. But I've been lucky enough to meet some people who, did have that bigger story than I did, but have become longtime friends. And it's really cool. But I mean, for me, I'd say one of my favorite stories was Morticia decided to go out and do some showcases in LA. And this was pre-planned. So I'd gotten in the band. It was the spring after I joined the band, so it would be spring of 92. And it was 2 weeks after the Rodney King riots that we wound up to go out to LA for a couple of weeks. But I'm like, at that time, I had never really been out of Wisconsin, Minnesota, whatever. I never went. I mean, when I was a kid, we went to Disney on a vacation. Never left the area. So I'm on a plane flying to Los Angeles to play the Roxy, to play the Whiskey, to play, I think we would play the Troubadour and another club called Spice that doesn't exist anymore. It was on Hollywood Boulevard. But this place that I had spent so many years, my entire teenage life, reading magazines about the Sunset Strip and being there and all that, and fired up. And we get out there and our promoter out there, I think if I remember his name was Henry, met us, and we went up to the Strip literally the first night. As our bass player at the time had friends that lived in Glendale, so for the first couple nights that we were there, we stayed there. And then we got there, moved our stuff in, immediately got in the car, went down to the Strip, and that first time driving up Sunset Boulevard between the bottom of the hill where the Whiskey is and the kind of the top of the hill where Gazzari's and the Roxy and the Rainbow are. So we get up to the Roxy and we pull in, and they didn't call it tribute at the time because, again, this is 1992, but there was a tribute, if you will, to Jim Morrison going on. And Matt, the drummer, and our bass player Tim both really were into Jim Morrison, and it really never was my bag. No knocking him or anything. It just wasn't my bag. So Jody and I went next door, across the alley to the Rainbow, and again, a place that it's like the Vatican for alcoholics, I guess, or something like that. Anyway, for hair metal guys, I'm walking. I literally been in Los Angeles for like 2 hours, and I'm walking into the Rainbow. This is crazy. And we walk in and we sit down, and we're just looking around, and again, seeing videos of like Guns N' Roses were getting interviewed at that back booth on MTV or whatever, and seeing it for the first time, and you're sitting there. And of course, the first thing is, well, it's not nearly as big as I thought it would be. But, again, that's like any experience. So Jody and I are sitting there, order a drink, and within 2 minutes, somebody's standing at our table looking down at us going, which one of you is going to buy me a drink? We look up and it was Lemmy. And I'm like, okay, I got goosebumps thinking about it. And Lemmy sat down, we bought him some drinks. And of course, he sat and he chatted with us for like an hour, and maybe it was 20 minutes, but it felt like just being in his presence, like, that's Lemmy. So and you're cool. Sitting at a table and I'm buying you a drink. And then we started pitching ourselves. He's like, and of course we get into like, nice Minnesota mode. And we're like, hey, we're a vampire band out of Minnesota. And he's like, you're a what? No, what? but we're playing tomorrow night at the Roxy. If you'd like to come, we'll put you on the list. And he just shakes his head. He goes, I don't need to be on any list, but I'll be there. And sure as hell, he was there. But it was just, I couldn't believe being out there, and I couldn't believe walking into the whiskey the first time, and all that experience of being out there, and getting to play those rooms, and standing on the stage playing our show at the Roxy, and you start thinking about who was all stood on this stage, and you're kind of like, oh wait, I'm supposed to be playing right now, but everything from Jim Morrison and Alice Cooper and the Hollywood Vampires to Cheech and Chong and doing their Battle of the Bands thing and Up in Smoke was filmed on that stage, and it's just so hard to not get wrapped into all that. But there's a lot more to that story, but that was that's something I will take with me forever. That was such a great experience. And, we went out to do showcases, and unfortunately nothing really came of it, which is probably 99.9% of bands that go out to do that, is nothing comes of it. But the experience is something that, and again, you learned because you saw how big venues were doing things, and how we watched the other bands that showcased with us, and we learned from them and whatever. So it was a really, as fun as it was very educational. And I probably didn't think that at the time, but now that I look back at it, I'm like, how many things did I pick up watching these other bands, and just being in LA and being around all that? It was very inspiring. It was really cool. So again, another part of my life that solidified I made the right decision when I was 8 years old. That lucky enough to be able to experience stuff like that. But man, there's so many crazy stories, or not even crazy, just when you run into somebody. I was lucky enough, again, in my other career, that, again, being a massive Kiss fan, and just kind of basically saying, my last year of college, I did a marketing presentation on the 7 business lessons I learned from Kiss. And I kind of wrapped 4 of those lessons into something I do in my other career. But that's how much they inspired me, everything about them. And, concepts of like, act the part before you are the part, understand your competitive difference and be the best at it. Kiss never claimed to be the greatest songwriters in the world, but they believed in what they did, things like that. So back when NAMM was doing Summer NAMM in Nashville, and this is 20 plus years ago, Paul Stanley, they were just kind of getting back, putting the makeup on. It was post reunion tour, so it was late 90s ish. He was endorsing Washburn at the time, and Washburn was really touting the company I worked for to try to become a distribution point or a retail point of it, whatever. And I remember the guy's name, Larry English, got me 15 minutes with Paul and myself sitting in his dressing room before he went out to sign autographs. And the two of us just sat and talked for 15 minutes. And of course, being a huge fan, I wanted to say all this stuff about, you changed my life and blah, blah, blah. But how I actually approach it is say, I could say all those things, but you've heard that a million times. But actually, it would have been the summer of 1999, now to come and think about it, because he had just become a father, and so did I. So we talked for 15 minutes about what it was like to be a dad for the first time, and how it literally was just scaring the hell out of us. And like, what did we do? And it was one of those, you always hear the story about never meet your heroes because they can never live up to it. And I've met a lot of them who that rung true, but Paul Stanley was awesome. He was super cool. And I haven't had an opportunity to bump into him again. And I assume that maybe I will someday. But if I do, I'm going to share that story with him, going, you don't remember it, but I do. But this is why it was so cool. So great stories, man. Like I said, we could probably go on for a couple hours about the places we've been and the people we've seen and the things we've done. But all right. So what's next for you?
Same thing you're doing. Yeah.
Let's get into promo mode.
Right. 5. Yeah. So we're no longer part of a band that basically brought us together, and we're continuing on and changing things up a little bit, I think. Well, yeah, we are a lot, actually.
Yeah.
No costumes, no
Correct.
Wigs, none of that stuff, and then but also just really focusing on the musicianship, I think, and especially the singing. We're very particular about vocal harmonies, and we work our butts off.
That's why I'm not singing anymore.
You have your parts.
I have my parts. Jock shouts. Oh, it's all good. I'm just kidding. It's topical. We're both laughing because we know what that joke means. But so.
But yeah. Otherwise, I don't have any plans for like anything else really. I'm not interested in filling in for anybody. I'm not. I don't know. You know, there's something about like. I think just after all the work that goes into trying to get an original band to take off or do whatever, you know, it's like a lot of in that. Even though like sometimes I do create or I crave that creative outlet, and for some reason still work on metal chops all the time, even though I'm like the chances of me joining a metal band are highly unlikely. You know, it actually it's not even because. Yeah, I guess if the right opportunity came up or something like that, maybe. But I think more so it's now just because I'm old and there's like a lot of young drummers out there now that I see on Facebook and I'm friends with, and they kick my ass. They're so good.
But that's a really good point. Is what excites me is that there's a next generation.
Yeah,
and there's some young guitar players in this town that you look at and say, man, rock and roll is still alive. And thanks to great parents or what have you, things like that. But that makes me feel good that music will continue. I'm a big believer in stewardship. It's one of the principles of the company that I run. But it's the concept of none of us own any of this. We're just stewards of it, and our job is to make the place better when we leave than when we got here. You know, so and you, I know, have a ton of young drummers who really are inspired by you, and they've told me as such. You know, and that's really cool to me. I think that's kind of a what's next. Rival 5 is we're going to do our thing, and we've charted a path that I think is really going to make us very unique. You were talking about focusing on vocal harmonies and things that really make you stick out. And we treat it's a business, and we treat it like a business because it has to be for us to get it to where it needs to be at the scale and scope we want it to be. It's going to be. But you know, again, I think it's kind of cool that we can, in a sense, kind of give back to a music community. I think now that I look at it, and now that I've been involved in music for so long, and I look back and say, okay, music has always been very much me. What about me? What about me? But our opportunity potentially to be a bit philanthropic with it and be able to give back. And, you know, and one of the projects I worked with, which was involved with Alice Cooper's, you know, non-for-profit, again, the shows were great, and playing Alice Cooper and doing an Alice Cooper show, that was fun and great and everything. But at the end of the day, knowing that we were helping support kids taking music lessons and dance and art and stuff like that, I was like, that's kind of when it hit me. Like, it's more than just this. So, you know, I think what's next is, you know, obviously Rival 5 is our thing. And, you know, who knows if we'll write music or whatever, who knows if that'll happen or not. But I'm thankful for this last thing that we were in, because it did get the 5 of us together. And we realized in that environment, we were employees of a corporation, but the 5 of us looked at each other and went, no, we're a band. And that's why we made our choice to do what we're doing, and we're charting our own course, and we have great support, and agency and direction, and we've got great partners and all these different things. But what's next, man, is, you know, I'm excited for what's next. I really am. You know, it's just starting again. It's kind of crazy to say that after all these years of doing it, but you know, we were talking before about starting over. I don't think we're really starting over, but kind of turning a page, I guess, would be the best way I could put it. So that's what's next, man. Rival5band.com and Rival 5 on Facebook and Instagram. And you got to get into promo mode every now and then. But yeah, I'm just excited about I was messaging with somebody the other day who was commenting about the show, who was at the show, and just was saying, I just love the fact that you guys are picking songs that no one else touches or no one else would touch or no people wouldn't think to touch. Yet they're such big songs that everyone's going to put around it. Because again, you know that there's this concept of you can play what you want or you can monetize, right? You know, that's kind of the rule of thumb is we're going to find that spot where we're going to take songs that everybody knows, but we're going to move them around a bit. And then we're obviously going to just pay a lot of tribute to the classics that are still just a blast to play because it's me and you and Andy laying that stuff down, and it's fun. And it's interesting too, is again, we've both been playing for so long. We've been playing together now for just shy of 3 years. And I was thinking to myself, actually on stage the other night, I was thinking to myself, I haven't looked at John yet. Maybe I should, just for stage appearances. I don't need to look at you because your rhythm and how you flow and whatever, I don't even need to look at you. And we've only been playing together for a couple of years. And that just kind of speaks to the experience and the amount of effort. And, the prior project maybe was just a great proving ground for us just to get used to each other. That's how I look at it.
Yeah,
we got really used to each other, and it's just a matter of stacking the layers now.
Yeah.
So, next year we're going to be playing a bunch of shows with the Hype, which is great. There's
another band that came out of
that other band. Yeah, exactly. Which is fantastic. But again, a great group of guys that do really well at what they do. They evolved out of this other band and defined what their path was going to be. And now they're really hitting a home run. They're doing a great job, and great dudes. And we're so excited to be playing shows with them. And obviously our agency is booking both of us. So, next summer is probably going to come around really, really quick. But
I gotta say, one thing that I really appreciate about Scott from the Hype is that, unlike our previous employer, he knows and accepts that there is room for everyone, to be out there instead of trying to hide it and put your, just like smother it or whatever. Like literally on his page, or on the Hype's page, they're like, "Hey, check out our friends in Rival 5."
Yeah. And I love
that camaraderie.
I love it too, and I think it's partly age because we all go back to when we were 22 and standing in front of bands doing the whole, I can do that better. And I think we've gotten to the point now where it's like, A, every day that we get to do this is really a blessing or whatever you want to refer to it as. And B, all these people out there rocking and doing it, we all have so much in common. And the more we do it, the more we support each other. And it's difficult. Again, the last couple of years, we've been gone. We've just been gone. So, I bump into a friend and say, "Hey, man, you got to come out and see our band." I'm like, "I'll show you my calendar and I'll try. When are you playing next?" They're like, "Maybe next June would be a good opportunity for me." But the fact that music is still going strong and I'm seeing it, that we should be out there supporting each other. There is room for everybody and then some. And we should really give shouts out to Mike and to John Sonic doing their jams on Wednesday nights in the 2 different venues. That's bringing more people out and giving them another reason to get out and do these things. So, absolutely, props to them too. So, have we missed anybody?
No, I don't.
We get along with everybody.
I do love those jams, like the collaboration between some of the musicians that go to Mike's jam, more like Beth and her husband Steve, and just some of those guys. They're just great musicians. And then when they hit me up for the really hard songs, that like they're just like, why did I agree to do this? Like when we did Paradise Lost by Symphony X. That song is so insane. It doesn't sound like it is, like when you're listening to it. But if you're a musician and then you start counting it, you're like, what? Hold on, and then like, so then
there's not supposed to be decimals and time signatures, is there?
I just like, that was bananas.
It's 9.44 time. The jam things are cool, and I want to get involved more of that, but we got that chance to play the fundraiser with John Sonic, and me and you and Hollenbeck and our boys from Wicked Garden, and was it? Yeah, that's right. Ian Lockiner played bass, and we just decided we're going to play a Foo Fighter song. I'd never played a Foo Fighter song in my life. Not that I don't like them, I just wasn't in that environment. And without a rehearsal, we just went in and we just tore that ass up, and that was really cool. To the point, I was like, fun. Can we do some more of this? So, we should figure something else out to do for the next one or something like that. But
I agree, yeah.
But that's why I keep hitting you up saying when we go to jams, we have to do some Danzig songs or whatever. Not a lot of Danzig fans out there, but I'm one, man. That first album, we got to play Twist of Cain. You can pull that off as a singer. You got the pipes, the pipes and the pipes. So cool. Yeah. Well, that was fun. Thanks, bro.
Thank you.
I'll see you Thursday night
at my house.
And, rehearsal.